Hello to parents in Columba's College of sixth year of 2020. My name is Stuart Wilson and I'm from Zest Life Therapeutic Services here in Churchtown and Harold's Cross, Dublin. It was my extreme pleasure to connect with your young people this year, and little did we know that we would be sitting here having a conversation on the back of a pandemic. My idea of putting together a video was to try and assist parents. I'm putting a video together for parents and one through for your young people to try and assist them with their new normal as such heading into July and August leaving cert. So with this delay in the leaving cert, that it's obviously produced some upsets and anxieties trying to assist our young people. And I hope that I've helped for parents a little bit here as well by putting together a video that I think will benefit, and I hope it will. I'm going to share my screen with you if that's okay. And hopefully you should be seeing the screen come through now, just saying Zest Life Therapeutic Services. And I'm going to start, if it's okay, by just first of all thanking all of you as parents, because I know many of you are involved in the front line assisting worldwide in different parts of the world, assisting with some of the difficulties we're having as a result of this pandemic. So whether you're working as doctors or nurses or medical staff or frontline staff in any shape or form, first of all, thank you so much for all you're doing to assist the safety and wellness of us all. For those who might be working in areas connecting in things like pharmacy or retail or groceries as well, again, thank you for all that you do. I'm also very grateful to everybody in St. Columba's College who've assisted our young people in navigating these strange times, both online to assist in supports and backup. So thank you one and all for all you have done. And if it's okay, I'd like to start by just explaining a little bit of where we all find ourselves at the moment in this strange situation of what we call homeschooling, or for our young people to be working online from at home. And I'm not sure about all of you, but I found this transition quite difficult. I have 5 kids of my own, all at home at the moment, and 3 who are school going. And this scenario has changed the whole geography and the dynamics of how we do home life. I think I got quite excited in the early days and confident about how we were navigating schooling with our children. And I used to quite enjoy bringing our kids to school every day, getting them to their school on time, and happy to leave my home knowing that I was going to have a great day, go to my office and connect with people, and then to come home and collect my kids perhaps on the way, having had a great day, to discuss that with my wife. When I'd leave in the morning, I'd be able to say goodbye to her at the front door with a kiss and head off for my day. Now I'm finding it difficult to get my kids to go to bed. I'm finding it difficult to get them out of bed, and I'm finding it difficult to even find a screen to work on myself because they're all using all the various devices in the house. I find myself so exhausted going to work these days that it's difficult to even find my poor wife's face. I find myself, to give her a kiss, I find myself actually kind of almost leaning into her and shaking hands and wishing her the very best of luck for the day. So homeschooling has created this difficulty. I have a whole new respect for the teachers that I had before, but I definitely have a higher respect for now. So thank you to all of you who are teaching staff, who have assisted house masters as well and house mistresses who have assisted our young people over the years. We have a whole new respect for you. I'm going to give you a little bit of an explanation what to expect, if that's okay, from your young people in St. Columba's over the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And as parents, how we can kind of try to guide and help them. So let's explain where I'm going with this, if that's okay. My fear, being very honest with everybody at the moment, is that we have on the back of this pandemic, it's created an earthquake, which I truly believe will create a mental health tsunami unless we are aware and unless we start to get active to assist our young people as parents or as carers to try and make the best of what is a difficult situation. So I do fear a mental health tsunami on the back of this if we're not careful. Obviously, it's difficult because our young people have had that extension of time from what they expected to have, which was the summer free, and now having to face the leaving certificate in July and August. And these circumstances are unfair. I mean, I've actually said in the video that I sent out to your young people, this is unfair. This is a difficult situation for them. It's not just this year. They have been in secondary school heading towards leaving cert all of their existence of secondary school in those 6 years. So it has really changed that and made it difficult and unfair for them. And it's not just that delay that's unfair, it's also the anxiety that that produces. I'm aware that some of you may have your young people, not even geographically with you, they may be in Ireland and you may be abroad, and therefore that in itself produces anxiety, which is again for your young people is difficult and for you as parents feels unfair. So they may also be missing parents and grandparents or worried about people's wellness. So in many of those cases, because you may be separated from your 6 years, I want to be able to try and assist us to try and understand this difficulty that we're creating from a mental health perspective. Also, because our young people have a wonderful existence in St. Columba's College, connecting with their friends, their peers, teachers, etc. on a daily basis. There's so much goodness in that, in connectivity. Whereas now what we're asking them to do is essentially to connect online. And I do again fear mental health tsunami coming on the back of that, because forcing our young people online all of the time has got mental health concerns attached to that, which I'll discuss a little bit later on, if that's okay. So their usual go-to people that I've mentioned here, their usual kind of go-to people are not always available, not quite available for them, because that could be peers. And with your young people, they'll connect with peers very, very quickly and communicate with their friends when they're in any kind of difficulty or concern. One young person said to me recently that just even the physical touch of not being able to, as a guy, connect with your friend and be able to give them a hug or be able to, as our young men do, shake hands and shoulder bump, that's difficult and changed for them as well. So I wanted to look a little bit ahead to see what can we do then as parents. So for young people, what can we do as parents to try and get them over the line of the Leaving Certificate heading towards July? First and foremost, it sounds a little unusual to say, but first and foremost, I have found we need to take stock for ourselves. And this sounds a little unusual, but are you okay? I found for the first week of this pandemic actually quite off center. I found it a little bit difficult to, the ground had moved, pretty much from beneath our feet. And there was a completely break of routine that was quite difficult. And I truthfully found that quite difficult myself for the first few days. So I want to check in with you to say, are you doing okay? How are you as a parent? Because this situation is tough on parents. It's tough on you if your young person is with you and therefore you're navigating homeschooling as such at home. And it's tough on you if your young person is not with you. If you have your young person being looked after in Ireland with family or friends or such like, and you're having to do that from the distance, that's very tricky as well. So I want to be able to try and help you to navigate that. And I'm asking the question to you, similar to what I would have asked to your young people. Who are you leaning on in this difficult time? Have you got a go-to person? Now you might say, yes, I've my wife or my husband or a family friend. And it doesn't need to be necessarily a professional, but are you leaning on somebody who you know you can go to with the pressures of all that's going on for you? I've written in here, it's important to self-care. Self-care and self-regulation are two different things. They may be connected, but they're two different things. And self-caring is fine, looking after ourselves. I have a picture here of putting on the mask on an airplane for yourself before you can assist anyone else. And that's really important. And I also find for myself on a daily basis, self-regulating is really critically important. And for me, creating things that I know, not just if I think about them, but if I physically do them, they have an impact on how well my day goes. Now, for me personally, that's taking exercise, that's going for long walks, or that's for going for a run, to be able to know, even though I might not feel like going out for that in coming back, I feel so much better. It has a hugely beneficial impact on my day. Creating incredibly important routines daily for yourself that you know will help. In that first week, I've written here, being intentional about relationships, especially your own. And that was a couple of different things. I found in navigating that first week, when my moods might drop or it might just feel a little bit overwhelming, that getting out for a walk and being intentional about relationships, connecting with people, making some phone calls while I was going for my walks, connecting with people I haven't spoken to in a while, being very intentional about relationships, took the focus off myself and actually made it being a little bit more about connecting with other people, maybe ringing them to encourage them or to check in on them or to assist them. I found myself coming back from walks feeling so encouraged. I'm sure you've tried that, where you ring somebody to encourage them and actually you come off the phone because you feel so encouraged. And I think that makes it a little bit clearer in our own worlds that life's not just about me, but more about we. And as a result of that, feeling much better for ourselves. Now, the one thing I did find as well is even just having conversations with my wife to stay united as parents by spending time and looking after ourselves in our own relationship just really helped that as well. So the balance was important. So therefore, taking stock for ourselves, creating that absolute certainty that we are feeling okay ourselves and therefore able to look after our young people around us. This might seem a little strange to say because I'm saying here about listening to our young people's moaning. And now, forgive me if there's any young people watching this. I'm not suggesting they're all moaners, but they've in going through this difficulty for them. It's actually important for them to be able to vent, to let off the steam, to be able to communicate about how difficult the circumstances are that they find themselves in. Which, let's be honest, is difficult. We need to really listen to them. Why that? Why so? Their brain is not fully developed until they're in their mid-20s. Science would even say late 20s, perhaps. And we know that the central nervous system, the reptilian part of the brain part that's very much emotive and reactional, which is different in adults because in adults we have a fully developed cortex, neocortex, prefrontal cortex, part of our brain that understands the rational thinking and decision making, and therefore being able to rationalize how we live our day and what we do during our day. Not fully developed in our young people, so they are more, I suppose, in some ways reactive. Why is listening so important? If our young people are moaning and we find ourselves listening, their central nervous system is literally starting to calm. The limbic system or the amygdala is literally calming in the central nervous system for them. So they're learning how to self-soothe by communicating, by talking, and by us listening. Now, I don't know about you, but quite often we might find ourselves listening with an intent to reply. In other words, that's not really listening. That's listening, thinking about what we're going to say back. And I don't find myself with my own young people that they don't like being told quite often what to do. But when they find a solution for themselves, which in my wisdom, I feel I could have given them 10 minutes before that. But if I listen to them and they get to that solution, they've now developed their cortex or are developing their cortex in such a way that they're establishing new neurological pathways, new ways of finding solutions and answers. In other words, problem solving, in other words, creating resilience. So rather than solve their issues, I'm listening to them come through with their own. And I've written in here, if you find yourself offering wisdom, stop. My young people think they're more intelligent than me anyway, so they don't tend to listen to that. And as we've said, if they are communicating and we are listening, they're learning how to do that and self-soothe for themselves. Offering yourself as a person to go might seem so ridiculous to even put down in writing, but making yourself available, we might say as parents, but sure, look, they know that they're our kids. They know we're here for them all of the time. And although that's true, of course, it's also really important to communicate this and say, I'm always here for you. You can come to me if you feel upset about this, or if you feel like you just need to vent. Offering yourself as a go-to person is important. Here's the facts though. Quite often our young people don't go to their parents. Now, there was a study done by the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland approximately 6 to 8 years ago, which talked about how young people who've gone through difficulty, who managed to come out the other side of that and had mental health difficulties, mentioned when they were asked, who was it that assisted you? What was it that got you through? When this investigation and research was done, they discovered that it was usually a significant other older adult. Now, in most of those cases, that significant other older adult wasn't a parent. So it was a youth pastor, it was a teacher, it was a therapist, it was a sports coach, it was a drama coach, etc. It was somebody who they felt they held in esteem and that they listened to. As a result of that, this person, 95% of cases, got them through that difficult time. So I think it's really important to be able to assist our young people to connect to those kind of people, and actually promoting those people as go-tos is important, particularly at the moment. If you're living away and your young person is in Ireland, perhaps, where you need to promote those relationships, rather than sometimes which we do as parents, which is to say, look, you don't need to talk to your uncle or your aunt or your rugby coach if you're worried about something, come and talk to me as an adult. I'm actually saying, yes, of course we can do that and put ourselves forward, but also to promote those connections with those people is significantly helpful. And quite often those situations, our young people will talk more to them than they might even talk to ourselves. So to promote that, obviously with a trusting, caring, loving person that you trust. I've written in here, and that's a little bit, seems a little harsh to say this, but bear with me because I'm going to explain this in the next slide. If you don't have the relationship with your teenager, you don't have the right to challenge them. Now that sounds quite controversial, forgive me. However, I humbly would suggest that we need to promote and assist other people to do that if they have the relationship. Maybe it's another parent, or maybe it's, like we said, a coach or a teacher or somebody within perhaps therapeutics. Even if you don't have the relationship with them, offer yourself. And the offering, or I call that making a bid for your kid, the offering of ourselves sometimes can be enough and is appreciated even if they don't take us up on it. And I've written at the end here, discovering their language of love and offering to meet it. And I'm going to explain that by communicating what we talk about here, which is love languages. This is It's actually a book written by a chap by the name of Gary Chapman, and it's something that you can read at another time, but very helpful. This is actually something that initially I started to communicate with my wife and I found very helpful. It was, I think, after about 10 years of marriage or so, when I thought I was being a hero as a husband, and we sat down and communicated about how loved she felt, or in this case, not felt. And we ended up having a great conversation that it was hard to have in some ways, but assisted us into doing things a little bit differently. Because my view was I was meeting my wife's needs and therefore looking after her in whatever way I could. And when we investigated, I was doing love the way I had been loved as a kid, and therefore my way of doing that was communicating it in both hugs, physical touch, and in communication of words, by telling my wife regularly that I loved her, etc. Her way was different because when she was growing up, her view was that if you loved somebody, you showed them quality time, you gave them time. And in a busy house with 5 kids, that was difficult to do. So we weren't connecting in the way that was important for us both. We both thought we were, but we weren't doing it in the way that our partner needed to receive it. So for us, that was really enlightening. It was an incredible conversation. Again, as I say, probably tricky at the time when you think you're a superhero and you discover you're not. There's a little bit of vulnerability and humility attached to that. But what I discovered my wife's language was quality time. Small, simple things made a big difference. So even every evening we have what we call couch time, sitting down for 15, 20 minutes after dinner, where the kids don't interrupt us, where we just catch up, have a conversation, ask the question, how's your heart? How are you getting on? And that has had a massive impact for that feeling of connectivity and feeling loved. And the second thing we've done is actually just simply bringing a date night every week where we spend time on a Thursday having time together. And rather than sneaking out a window when the kids were younger so they wouldn't hear us, now to being able to have them being a part of seeing us go out, and it says to them, mum and dad's relationship is really important. So being very intentional about how we meet each other's needs from a relationship perspective is very important. It's exactly the same with kids. Now, you can actually go on to Google and just search up 5 love languages test for your adolescents, and you can find out your young people's love languages. I have 5 children at home, and I thought I knew all this, and in the case of 3 of them, I got it wrong. And when I did this test with them, it was brilliantly helpful, because then I just started to meet their needs in a way that assisted them. And because I met those needs and connectivity, it was so much easier because I didn't have to make all the ways I thought to connect with them and love them just their way of receiving it. So for instance, with my 10-year-old daughter, Tamara, for her, it was leaving little notes for her, which is like little acts, random acts of kindness, little acts of service, or words of affirmation in those messages. For one of my other daughters, it was going out for dinner with her. So for my son, it was getting a breakfast time with them. Everyone was different, and each one met those needs, and I would do that accordingly. Now, why am I saying all this? The reason for that is that I said in the last slide, if you remember, that if you don't have the relationship with your teenager, you don't have the right to challenge them. This is how we make sure, first of all, when we work with young people, that underneath we are meeting their needs. Okay, we're meeting their needs first, and then we can talk boundaries, rules, regulations, all the things that young people need to know and achieve. But if we don't meet the needs, we just meet confrontation when we bring those things in. And I don't know about you, but I find that our young people, their levels of respect for us as parents grow when we meet those needs. And they would say that respect is a two-way thing, and then the congruence and integrity are formed in the relationships. So this has been really helpful for me with my young people, my kids at home, but also when I work with parents to assist parents in meeting needs to be able to then bring in boundaries. This is one of the things I find very, very helpful with young people, to be very specific about things. Do you know, when you communicate with your young people, quite often you'll ask them, how are you doing? And the reaction is often fine. It's quite often one-word answers. Not that they're being disrespectful, but just that's the way they sometimes might communicate. Or how you doing? Everything's grand or fine. So when I'm not quite sure that that's the truth with my young people, because they might be struggling a little bit, or I really want to check in with them, this is what I'll ask them. Where are you on the line? Now, they know this language after a little while, and they might even have fun with it. But it's to ask them specifically, where are you on the line? And that means 0 is I'm terrible, I'm doing appalling, or 10 is I'm doing amazing. Where are you on the line? If they say to you, I'm at a 2, give me space here. The question we might have is, well, how can I help you move up to a 3? It might be a huge jump to go from a 2 to a 10, but it might not be such a significant jump to go from a 2 to a 3. And sometimes the movement from a 2 to a 3, or from a 4 to a 5 is all that's required, because that produces kind of hope, and then that we can move along. So the commentary of, how are you doing? Fine. Yeah, but where are you on the line? is actually a really, really good one to understand a little bit. How can we help move them up the line? This is one I love. It's so simplistic. It's one that I use all of the time. And it's to assist people to develop their own, what I call simply a wellness jar. I do some wellness workshops with a really, really good pal of mine. And we devise different things that we can put into this. These are kind of corporate wellness workshops. Little things on Post-its that we can write out, that you might have about 10 things or so that are things that will take you from a 2 to a 3, or from a 4 to a 5, or a 5 to a 6. And you'll write those things down on colored Post-its, put them into a jar, and do this with your young person. Do it for yourself, but do this with your young person, so that there are things that you can immediately do that you can write down on this that assist you to move up from maybe a 3 to a 4, or 4 to a 5 on the line. And I would suggest for you that you do this with a little bit of fun with your young people. It might be things you can do together, but it also might be things they can do for themselves. And there are all sorts of things. It might be go for a walk. It might be go out in the garden and play with the dogs. It might be to watch a really cool movie. It might be, my friend says that he likes to go for chips, to buy chips. And for him, that makes him excited and happy and makes him feel good. So he goes, I don't suggest we should do it all the time, but it's just little things that will help, or that will make us feel better. Get about 10 things and write them down and put them in your jar. And you can do it for yourself, but also have your young person have this. So if you feel they're down the line and they're not doing so good, these are some things they can get to bring them up the line. And quite often that might be make a phone call to a friend. It might be watch some comedy. It could be a whole list of different things, and everybody is different. So having 10 or so things that you can pick in your jar, that you know, if I pick one of those, they're random, but if I pick one, it immediately moves me up. It assists my resilience and brings me up in my wellness. A few things that I just think are helpful for parents, if that's okay, to suggest in a point of view of role modeling how we do good boundaries. So don't forget, we've met the needs underneath. Now we're talking about how to implement those boundaries. Keeping a peaceful home, because your self-caring is incredibly important. And don't worry if you're geographically distant. First of all, I'm sorry, because I know that's so hard when your young people are geographically distanced from you during something like this. That's difficult, but it's okay to promote peace and calm from the distance. So, you know, your conversations with your young people, whether they be connected through Zoom, I would suggest that always, if you can, to bring those in a visual context, not just verbal. Don't just phone them, but to FaceTime them or Zoom in to meet them, is really, really helpful, so that they can see you, but they can also see you're promoting around you peace and calm. So we're not getting online to encourage and promote all our issues and upsets. We're getting online to promote our connectivity and our love. So that's how you can still meet those needs. If your young person's love language is spending time, then if you were face-to-face, you'd go out for dinner together. Do something creative where you can have dinner together and meet those needs online, that you can play a board game online, or that you can play cards if that's what you wish to do online. Create and find from their knowing their love language that you can do that online. That creates that peaceful home we're talking about. Showing unity and fairness in how we're parenting is incredibly important. I have a great belief that simplistic chores, assisting around the house, if they're with you, simplistic chores, assisting around the house is helpful. If they're not with you, that this is something that they're doing in the house that they're in, so you can connect with the person who is their go-to person in that house, that they have some simplistic chores that they can help with. Why is that so helpful? Because it actually promotes, even though they're in a period of difficulty and uncertainty, it actually promotes their own resilience. So, you know, and I know that it's difficult to do some mundane chores when you've got other things on your mind, but it's helpful, and it does assist them in their own resilience. So I strongly suggest that if they're with you, get a little agreement, write these things down. I say here, no surprises. The reason I mean that is if you're asking the kids to help out with a dishwasher, or you're asking them to, you know, do some hoovering or something like that, or to assist you in some shape or form in the garden or whatever else it might be, the answer is always, no, I'm too busy, or I've got stuff I need to be doing, or I'm doing my leaving cert, haven't you heard? You know, whereas if there's actually an agreement chart of simplistic chores and there's an expectation that those things will be done, it assists their resilience, it creates assistance for them in their own wellness, but there's no surprises. And that's really, really important. I've also written in there, so to meet their love languages, for them to understand them, to create the wellness jar, If possible, to eat together as a family. I just think it's so incredibly important. If you're physically together, to eat together as a family, because that's where we can communicate around the table. If you're not physically together and you can create it, depending on time zones, etc., to Zoom them in, I just think that's a lovely thing. And it feels like you're a part of that. And we don't start the meal nearly till everybody is present, if that makes sense. I'm going to talk about healthy sleep routines in just a moment, and also communicate exercise. If they are physically with you, waking up reminders, and I say this really from experience, not just wake up rouse, because if your young people are great and they're jumping up in the morning and they're happy to get up, that's fine. But if it's like my house, at times it can be a little bit difficult to get all our young people out of bed. Not wake up rouse. We're not having fights with them. We're having wake up reminders, and it's okay at the moment if it takes them 3 or 4 reminders to get out of bed. Our young people are different. We might say things like, well, you know what, if we can get up and work, you can get up and do some study. It's different and it's difficult for younger people. So remember that. I'm not going to go into all the science of the brain and why that is, but it is not the same as us as adults. So be a little bit more compassionate and caring if that's okay, if we can. So our young people, sometimes if they're at home with you, will stand around the edge of what I call a red zone, which is red zone being mayhem or an explosive reaction or upset or anger or frustration. They can be on the edge of a red zone and they are literally inviting you in there with them. They want to row with you or to get upset with you because they're on the edge of that red zone. It's like their reactive brain. They need to get into that high emotion and they'll express it by using somebody who's close to them that they love. And what I'm saying to us as parents is when you find yourself right on the edge of that red zone, don't take the bait. Don't walk into a red zone or be pulled into it by our young people. When you're the adult with a fully developed brain, when you find yourself on the edge of that red zone, knowing the next comment I make is going to lead us into the red zone, walk away. I use what I call the stop method, the simple method, which is STOP. Stop what you're doing, take a break and walk away. And as you walk away, do the O part, which is observe the bigger picture here. Your young people are in difficulty. It's not an easy situation. We're all in pandemic. It's really difficult. And the bigger picture is you want to have peace and calm within the home and for things to go back to normal. So the O part is to look at that bigger picture. The P part is to prepare and plan, knowing what works and not getting stuck into a red zone. Work in the green zone. Green zone is great. That's where they usually come back an hour later. If we walk away from the red zone, they come back an hour later and they go, look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to explode earlier or whatever. All the learning is done in a green zone and all the assistance we can give them is done in the green zone. So if we can help them to do that, that's important. They can't navigate that as easily as we can with a fully developed cortex. So it's easier for us as adults. Understanding the next part is really, really essential. This is the bit that I also fully am aware of that's difficult right now for our young people, because we have taken them from their brilliant routines in St. Columba's College, where they're out and about, going from one class to another. A young person said to me last week, just in relation to exercise, they said to me that it's so difficult because normally they would carry a heavy bag around, they go to a locker, move around from lockers from class to class, or then they'd have PE, or they might have sports after school, or all these different things. They spend so many steps and so much energy just moving and navigating around school to nothing. They're now nothing, unless they're doing classes online or they're in the back garden or they're doing sports around the general kind of area. They're doing very little and expending very little energy. And what we've asked them to do instead, so normally the energy, if you think about it, brings down their stress hormone, their cortisol levels, and brings up their serotonin, their moods. And that's not happening now. So the opposite is happening. Their cortisol or their stress levels are high and their moods are low, and they're not getting that exercise to change the balance. So we have now made it 10 times worse. Why? Because we have said to them, you're going to do all your studies online. And online, so we know that cortisol levels, science would say, excess levels of screen time. And your young people's daily average before this pandemic was about 5 hours a day. Now it's up to about 10 hours a day. And more. So not only are they doing study online, they're also socializing online. They're connecting with parents, perhaps if you're living away, online, and their friendships and connections on Zoom. I don't know if you've noticed, but they're experts on that now. Zoom and Google Teams, etc., and all the different things they're using. So we're telling them to be so much more online. So what's that meaning for their mental health? Their cortisol levels are going through the roof because the backlight of iPads, laptops, phones produces cortisol in the central nervous system over extended periods of time. So it brings up stress and it brings down mood. So some simple things this is okay. We need to live with this at the moment. there will be a little bit of a new normal after this, which will probably include a bit more screen time than before, but not as much as they're on currently now. So what can we do? We need to understand sleep hygiene about the preparation for heading towards bed. And if they've been hours and hours online, 10 hours online, and then they're going straight to bed, it's not going to work for them. Their body won't go into a REM sleep, a deep sleep, a brain replenishment sleep for, science would say it delays it, because melatonin, which is the sleep patterns, the hormone that produces sleep patterns, will not rise correctly with excess levels of screen time. Cortisol, the stress hormone, can slow down the production of melatonin, whereas melatonin and serotonin, which is mood and sleep, will rise well together. So just taking the science, what can we do? Roughly speaking, an hour and a half before bed, suggest that they have no screen time. Now, if they must, TV is not as bad, but if at all possible, that their last hour and a half before bed does not include screens. I'm going to talk about what's really helpful to assist them. Number of the important things are trying to get phones out of their rooms at nighttime so that it doesn't interfere with their sleep patterns while they're sleeping, but also the very best routines at nighttime. If we go for a gentle walk an hour and a half before bedtime, it pulls down cortisol levels and it increases serotonin. Okay. It also assists, because we're increasing serotonin, melatonin to rise. Okay. So a gentle walk is brilliant. I'm not talking cardiovascular training. Simple, gentle mental health walk brings down cortisol levels and increases our serotonin. Talking face to face with another human being literally does the same. It regulates the brain and it assists in bringing down cortisol levels. It assists in bringing up serotonin levels, and therefore again will allow melatonin to rise. So ideally, walking and talking significantly impacts wellness. I've written in read as well here. So ideally for your young people, having a book or a magazine beside the bed has a huge benefit for mental health. Reading will do the same. It'll bring down cortisol and it'll increase serotonin levels and allowing melatonin to rise. I've also written in writing. Now we know this. Anybody who amongst us as parents who is artistic and creative, you know that doing anything like art or creativity or even jigsaws or doodling or drawing, journaling brings down cortisol levels. It immediately brings you into a place of wellness, brings down cortisol and increases serotonin, again allowing your melatonin levels to rise at nighttime. So those four things, walk, talk, read and write, they're the things I would try to strongly promote to assist our young people to get into good sleep hygiene. So their preparation for sleep at nighttime includes those four things. Even if we've had excess levels of screens, that will bring down the cortisol levels and increase serotonin. I'm going to finish by just giving you my contact details. My name is Stuart Wilson. I'm contactable at stuart@zestlife.ie, and my mobile number can be used for text. If you're concerned or worried about anything for your young people, please feel free to contact us. You have an incredible support services in St. Columba's College, from your warden right the way through into your housemasters and mistresses, teachers, into the SAN department, therapeutics that you have there as well, which are exceptional and helpful. And we're delighted to play a backup service to all that's done in St. Columba's College. So please don't feel at any stage at all that you're on your own or you're worried or concerned. You've got places to go and to communicate. And of course, within Zest Life College, within Zest Life Therapeutic Centre, we're delighted to assist you in any way that we can. So please feel free. We're here if you need us, and delighted to assist you should you need us in the future. So I'm going to sign off if that's okay. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, please feel free to give us a shout. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say, I hope all goes incredibly well for you, for your young people during this difficult time. And I'm sure we'll all come out the other side of this, and I look forward to seeing you on that side, if that's okay. Take care and God bless you all. Bye-bye.